Well, good evening, Kirk Uhler back with you. Hey, the old joke is that if the opposite of pro is con, then obviously the opposite of progress is Congress. And well, if you look at our crumbling national infrastructure and our failing school system and our exploding debt obligations, you might think there's some truth to that. However, we have to give credit where credit's due. You see, Congress in the last session single-handedly destroyed the flu. That's right, we have to give credit to Congress for putting an end to the flu. You see, as we were all concerned about this growing pandemic of COVID, Congress went ahead and they addressed that really pesky thing that we deal with year in and year out with tens of thousands of deaths and hundreds of thousands of hospitalizations. Well, it just poof, disappeared because Congress passed the CARES Act and the flu went away. What do I mean by that? Well, let's take a look at CDC charts looking at impacts of influenza going back over the years. Now, CDC put this chart together. I just printed it. So those of you concerned that I'm skewing the data, this is their stuff. I just printed it off. And what's really interesting is you look at virtually every line, and each color represents a different year. And virtually every line has a peak. This is interesting because this was the swine flu, the H1N1, right here, boom. And it was very early and then went away. But virtually every other year has a peak and then goes away. Some have a little peak and then grows up and then goes away. And then some have a higher peak and then go away. The green line represents last year's flu season. And last year's flu season had one pretty damn big peak, dropped off, came roaring back for a second, pretty good peak, dropped off, was roaring back for a third peak, almost as high as the first two. The only one of all of these that did that. And then all of a sudden dropped off to the point where it went below every other year that they have recorded on this chart. Interestingly, what happened right about here? Well, if you track this down, this is week 12 of last year. Week 12 of last year, of last flu season, I should say, I'm sorry, of the 1920 flu season. So that's week 12 of the year 2020, which happens to be the week ending March 21st, week ending March 21st, 2020. This is what the country looked like from a flu standpoint. Now, why is this date important? Because the week ending March 21st was the last week before we passed the CARES Act. Congress passed the CARES Act on March 25th, and the president signed it on March 27th. What did the CARES Act do? Well, if you've seen these videos, you know the CARES Act pays a premium in Medicare reimbursement for COVID-related hospitalizations. And it doesn't have to be a hospitalization that's confirmed by a test, by a positive test. Absent a positive test, it can be a hospitalization that is assumed to be COVID positive, absent a positive test. So here's what the week before the CARES Act looked like. You only had 7 states or districts. So you have the District of Columbia in here, and you have the territories. You've got Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands in here as well. So that's why this adds up to 53 instead of 50. For those of you at home keeping score who are concerned that I was cheating the numbers on it, you got the 50 states, the District of Columbia, and the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. So of those 53, only 7 were in the low to minimal category. 46, almost the entire nation is in moderate to very high. The darker the color, the worse it is. So this is the week before the CARES Act passed. Here's what the country looked like 2 weeks after the CARES Act passed. Poof! Flu's gone. We go from this, the week before the CARES Act, to this, the week after the CARES Act. Poof, gone. And at this point, we're now only 16 states or territories that are in moderate or high. 37 states have all of a sudden the flu went away as COVID cases started to rise. So that was one of my charts dropped. Hang on a second, gotta get it back. All right, there we go. So that was the end of the 1920 flu season. Just to prove how well Congress did in getting rid of the flu, what has happened so far in the 2021 flu season? They have done such a good job that we went from this last year, peak, drop, drop all the way off to, look at this. See these little triangles right down here? This is the 2021 flu season. It starts lower and remains lower than any other flu season on the chart. CDC's numbers, not mine. Starts lower, remains lower than any other flu season. So we made the flu go bye-bye really quickly with the passing of the CARES Act, and so far we've kept that pesky flu at bay. So again, the 400,000 hospitalizations that we saw in the last flu season, you know, as we're seeing hospitalizations spike from COVID, at least, thank goodness, Congress got rid of the flu. Because, boy, it would really be a shame if we had flu cases on top of the COVID cases and not instead of. I mean, wait, that doesn't. Well, anyway, let's see what the flu season looks like last year this time. Here was week 48. Last year this time, week 48, ending November 30th. This is what the country looked like with 24 states or territories higher than higher than low, in moderate above, and 29 below. So this was this week. Last year, because of the good work of Congress solving the flu problem with the CARES Act, we have no states or territories, 0 above the low category. All 53 states, the district, and territories are in low to minimal. So even though you might be worried that Congress still hasn't figured out an answer to COVID, they've proven they're on the job because they cured the flu.